Welcome back to the Unblock Your BS podcast. Today we're diving deep into the world of dating, relationships, and self-awareness with my friend and fellow coach, Adam Kiddoo. Adam and I go way back several years, probably 6 years, and we recently reconnected. We coach inside of an online business program together. We have the same mentor. We've had the same mentor and coach for years. But recently, Adam came across my TikTok content, and he had recently gotten divorced and started finding that this content that I was sharing was essential to what he was navigating in life. So we were talking about relationships and ways and post-divorce dating, how we were both in a very long marriage, and now what that looks like in navigating the landscape of dating in 2025. So we both come from a coaching background. We both understand how to shift perspectives. Uh, Adam helps heart-centered leaders. Like, he's very in tune, very aligned in his professional life, and now he's navigating how to do that in his personal life as well. So Adam is a single dad, again, recently divorced after, I believe, a 10-year marriage, and navigating this wild world of modern dating. And in this episode, we're getting real about what changes when you've been married for years and years and suddenly find yourself single again, why so many men and women are feeling overwhelmed with dating or just completely jaded and checked out of it, the ick that comes from online dating, how to meet people, how people that are on their healing journey and self-aware just stay at home, the importance of self-awareness in relationships and dating, because if you don't understand your patterns, you'll just keep repeating them, and how to stay detached from outcomes and actually enjoy the dating process instead of feeling like it's work or it's a game that you have to win, but you're losing rapidly. So if you've ever felt stuck in situationships, in cycles of toxic dating, that all men or all women are ick, if you're confused by the dating culture or you're just exhausted by the idea of starting over, this episode is for you. So let's get into today's episode with my friend, fellow coach, Adam Kiddoo. Welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. Glad to be here.
Good. Why don't you share what you do, how you help people, and then how you and I kind of reconnected after a couple of years of not being in each other's worlds?
Yeah. So, just like Tara, I'm a coach. I'm a heart centered leader, as I like to say. I help other heart centered leaders to show up with more presence, more purpose, and to be able to, present offers and use a certain message that's aligned with them to enroll people into their online courses and programs and their coaching programs. And that's essentially what I do. I'm a dad of two young guys. I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. Recently divorced a year ago now, and so I'm single dad in it. And yeah, it's just a big part of my world is my guys. But more than anything, I just see so much potential in every single person I come across, and I want to help others to see their own potential as well.
Beautiful. Love that. So Adam and I go years back. I can't even remember, maybe 2020, 2019, somewhere in there.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when you started seeing my content pop up, that's when we reconnected and then have been in contact ever since. So kind of talk to me about what it was you saw from the content I was now posting, because this is a pivot for me. You didn't know me as any sort of relationship person. It was, I was a business coach for salon professionals. So kind of talk to me about what stood out and why you thought this message was so important and so relevant to you.
Yeah, very cool. So Tara and I had coached together on certain calls, business coaching, and I knew her niche in her industry, what she was doing, and surfing on TikTok one day and ran across her content, and she was talking about relationships. And it was some things that I've heard before, but she always likes to find the layers deeper to really help others to understand it, to break it down, to see the nuances. And I thought it was brilliant. I really felt like you were hitting on certain key areas that nobody's talking about. You had talked about attachment styles, but you were getting, down in the nuances a little bit more where people keep it at a surface level, which is a good conversation to know, but you really got to dig a little bit deeper, or you just start labeling people out there and pushing people away when somebody might be actually aligned with you. So, but yeah, it's pretty cool because I didn't know Tara so much in watching her other content, but when I saw her talking about relationships, I was like, she's aligned. And that's something that I do in business as well, is I make sure that I help my students become aligned with their message and their offers. And right away, I just knew this is Tara's jam. So when she asked me to be on the podcast, I said, absolutely.
There was zero intention trying to be a relationship coach, and all of a sudden that's where we find ourselves. So you go with it.
Yeah, you were just sharing personal experiences. And that's what, that's what we connect with the most, is just like real personal experiences. And sometimes people coach a result that they got 10 years ago that they're kind of far removed for. And you've, been in the land of this. So you're in it and you're doing it and you're helping
My
people. It's
target
great.
audience 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so talk to me about Well, how long were you married for?
10
Okay, so
years.
same here. So you were back in the day where relationship statuses were like just coming out on Facebook. I think that's kind of the trajectory of when I met my ex-husband was, like I remember on our wedding night, I was like, let's change our relationship status to married on Facebook because that was it. That was like, and it felt very vulnerable to post a relationship status on Facebook. That's how far it goes back. I'm dating myself. But
Yeah, Facebook official, right?
right. And how
Making it Facebook
far the
official.
world has come since then, and dating apps and social media and, are you posting? Is it a hard launch? Is it soft? Like all of that narrative, which I feel far too old to be even speaking to. But talk to me about because you've been kind of like immersed in it the last year of even just getting out of the long relationship. But now do I start dating and relationships and what are attachment styles and what are all these new labels that we didn't have back in the early 2000s?
Man, I'm telling you, it's wild. So, married for 10 years. I was in the same relationship for 15 years. I've been out the game for a bit. Went through a few months after the relationship just to be and to process and allow myself to explore, who am I outside of this relationship and what ways of being did I show up in the relationship that isn't really aligned with me. So I had a chance to really sit with it all. As a freaking painful experience those 3 months, and I wanted everything in my power to avoid it and not feel it and just go on with my life and submerge myself in my work. But I just knew that that was the way, just to dive full in. And then I happened to find myself in a relationship, one of those synchronistic moments where things just happened and paths crossed, and one thing led to the other, and got in a relationship or excuse me, relationship for about 4 months. And in that time, it was great off the start, and, there were certain things that I got a chance to see how I show up in a relationship, and that's when I first learned about attachment theory when it comes to anxious attachment versus avoidant attachment, and I got a great school of the dating world and what's that about, and, and after that relationship, I took a couple few months off after that, and then I decided one day, hey, I had a friend that said, you should check out the dating apps, and I was kind of anti-dating apps, too cool for it or whatever. And I was like, let me check it out. And so get on the dating apps, and then there's a lot of new stories to share from there. But
The part of it is dating apps. Okay, so my
Mhm.
question for you, and we kind of talked about this in the pre-interview a little bit, is overall, what do you think the general consensus is of those that are, let's say, millennials to Gen Xers about dating? Maybe they've had a long marriage, maybe they've had a couple of marriages. What do you think the overall societal perspective on dating is? Healthy, not healthy,
Yeah.
emotional?
I think I would say, if I had to choose a word, I would say overwhelmed.
Mm,
Just like the social media world we're living in, there's a new expert that pops up every single day, a plethora of information, conflicting information. We have to do our due diligence and have discernment when it comes to sorting through the information that comes our way. Cause sometimes it's easy to be like, that's what I believe. And we just latch onto one thing, and it
that's
might
narcissist.
not really serve us. Yeah. And it sounds good the way they presented it. That makes sense, and as a coach of messaging and marketing, I can make a lot of different things make sense. It's kind of what we do in messaging and marketing. So you got to have your discernment to know the difference between what's right for you and what works for you and what doesn't. But the big difference that I see in the dating world is most people, not everybody, but if you found your sweetheart or your partner or your ex at this point in your hometown, we kind of had this mentality of like, whoever's in our hometown, there's somebody here that's right for us. And it's almost like I don't want to say the word settle, but I don't have a better word to say that. And sometimes we do settle and we don't really fully know ourselves when we get into a relationship. And so we have two people that are not really fully in their power. They're not really fully themselves. They're not really fully aware and expressed, that are trying to make it work in this balance, in this dynamic. And a lot of times that dynamic, somebody grows or they both grow and they grow apart. And there's a lot that can happen in that time together, that could shake up a marriage. And sometimes people are just like, okay, we're committed to making it work, but we're unhappy. And so for me now, it's like, okay, there's so many people on these dating apps. I mean, you could literally scroll endlessly for days. I got to throw a caveat. I'm in a small town in Kansas. I'm about 2 hours from any big city, so there's not a ton in the dating app. I have to, extend my mileage when I am on there. But it's no longer this place of just like kind of like, okay, who's here that I could be okay with, and we could, kind of just ride this life together. I've been through a marriage. I've invested so much into that, my time, energy, and my heart. And so now it's like I want to make sure that I honor and am open to dating and being fully present with somebody. But at the same time, it's like I'm kind of get to a point where it's just like I'm just not going to settle for
Yeah.
somebody that's not fully aligned at this point.
100%. And I think
Yeah.
I would say that was a great gift from divorce that they don't really talk about is the if you go on the healing journey after the divorce and you put in the work and you value yourself, you now start to value and understand the importance of the partner you bring into your world and how much that affects your mental, emotional, and physical well-being along with your future. I was watching TikTok, and they gave it this example of who is it you want to be with when you lose your parents? Not who do you want in the wedding photo and who do you want, to go to kids' birthday parties with, but like the real shit of life. And some of us have to learn that the hard way that the person we originally chose wasn't that person to do it with.
Wow.
Yeah. So it kind of puts a
Great.
different perspective on choosing partner.
That is. Wow. Yeah. I'm going to have to sit with that one for sure. That's good. Yeah.
Right.
Because it is, it's like, because, and I've talked to different people about this, just kind of through happenstance, but there was a part of me that's like, well, I need the pretty girl that, is looks good on the arm piece and makes me look better and things of that nature. And I'm like, well, that's one piece of it. And I was like, I would rather find somebody that's like, matches with me. We jive off each other. We have similarities. We have common values than what I thought in my mind. I need some pretty girl to allow my perceived value to increase. So even that was a sleeper for me. I didn't fully see that. And my eye was keen to just finding the pretty girls. And I have a friend that talks about the hot matrix. And it basically is just kind of this fun thing that says the hotter they are, the crazier they are. And there is some truth to that sometimes, so but it's like just for me to take the time to flesh out what do I really look for, what do I really want, so that way I don't have to try to fit somebody into my life that's not really aligned. And I mean, I'm not too choosy and picky when it comes to like they have to be 99 things out of 100, but it's like there's some certain characteristics when it comes to values that I'm just not negotiable
Yeah,
on. So
100%. I have a three-part framework for figuring out long-term relationships. So there's chemistry, which is that attraction piece and that sexual chemistry, the connection, which is the friendship piece, and then compatibility. Your connection and chemistry can ebb and flow. You can be more friends than like more roommates. You can be hot and heavy, but not like each other. But that compatibility, the future you're creating, co-creating the same thing, wanting to build together, that to me is the non-negotiable. If you are not compatible for how you want to live life, what you want out of this relationship, what are the non-negotiables, then what's the point? And most people, when they go into dating and relationships, are basing it off of either chemistry and or connection and very little emphasis on compatibility. And I think that's the main reason
I
why we
agree.
don't have great healthy relationships and we get into these codependent relationships and these toxic relationships or situationships. It's a misalignment of values, as you put it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to be able to have that flushed out, to have a better idea of what you want, you're no longer, because this is, as a Kansas boy, there's this phenomenon that happens. Let's say we're out hunting for a deer. I've never hunted a deer, but let's just say that for an
Okay.
example. You want to see a deer so bad that sometimes you actually think you see a deer. And there's been people that would shoot at certain things because they thought it was a deer because they want to see a deer so bad. So when you want that ideal partner so bad and somebody comes into your world and you kind of try to see, oh, this is like that person, but underneath it all, it's like maybe hindsight is always 2020, and you kind of look back and you're like, yeah, I fooled myself.
Yeah.
So that self-awareness piece, like you said, Terry, you got to have a self-aware streets, or what
Lonely.
do you say,
It's
that
lonely in these self-aware streets.
lonely in these self-aware streets for sure. So to be able to flesh that out up front is huge, and I love that you have a framework for that. It's so
Yeah,
powerful.
it helps simplify it in my brain. In a lot of ways, what I think the issue is what you were saying is like you want so bad to find that partner, and you and I both kind of come from the same coaching training where you manifest what you are. You create what you are. So if you
Mm.
come from a place of lack, scarcity, that I need someone, you will draw in needy people that give you what you want, but it's probably not what you want. If you're so hyper focused on, I don't want to be alone, you're going to get breadcrumbs. So you'll get just enough to stick around, but you still have increased loneliness because there's somebody there, but they're not actually meeting the needs, or you're too afraid to be alone. So you're self abandoning. So a lot of times people experience rejection and abandonment in their relationship when they have the fear of being rejected and abandonment going into it. So
So
that
good.
self-awareness piece to me is, and I think that's been the biggest shift for me over the last year, was about a year ago, I'd gotten out of situationship number 2. It was like 2.0. It was the same person, but just in a different body when I realized, oh, it's my pattern. Like, I can't just blame it on them anymore. This is a me thing. And so I kind of pulled back on dating to really get solid with myself because I was going into dating looking for what I could get. And what I've learned over the last year was that's an unhealthy way to approach dating and relationships.
Mm.
Now it's looking at who can I serve? How can I show up in the relationship knowing that I'm good on my own? I could be single for the next 5, 10 years. Sure, I want somebody, but like I am at peace with it. I have created a life that I feel stable with. But when I go into dating from a place of what can I get? Can I not feel lonely? Can I get companionship? Can I get somebody who's going to come in, protect, and provide? It's a needy energy. So, what's that experience been like for you of how your energy is going into or approaching dating?
Yeah, I love this. A big thing that's coming up for me right now is when I did, my healing, and it's not like I just went into a container and I'm fully healed, right? But I did. I focused whole heavily on feeling what I needed to feel, crying and just, expressing it, talking it out with friends and family, and just allowing it to be a messy process. But it's not like it was like, oh, I healed in 3 months and I'm all good. But I did get to this point. I love that you said that, Tara. I got to this point where I literally had this thought, I might even said it out loud, that I could be single for the next 10 years and I could be okay with that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get necessarily into the woo woo and the synchronicities, but within a week's time, I had somebody who had commented on a post of mine on Instagram, and I had communicated with this person before, and saw her picture, and I was just like, who is this person? I was drawn to her just the way I was drawn to her when I met her in person. And one thing led to another, and we got in a relationship. But there's so much to be said about how much power you get as being yourself and being in your power when you can be alone.
Yeah.
And I think there's this huge phenomenon in the world where people just cannot be alone. Even if they're in a relationship, they can't be alone. They're either on their phone or doing something, or they're keeping themselves busy, or they're just overthinking, spinning in their thoughts. And for me, it's like I'm a feeler. I was disguised for a very long time as a thinker. And in business, I would overthink myself and burn myself out where I'd have to take naps every day because I would leak so much energy just thinking, thinking, thinking. But I'm a feeler. And so for me to block the feeling and not feel what was trying to be felt and is trying to come through, we're going to have to process that energy at one point in time or another. And I don't want that energy sticking around for 10 years, come knocking at my door later, being like, okay, we didn't feel you, or you didn't choose to feel me then, but we're going to make sure that you feel me now. I don't want to play that game. And so for me, it's like to be alone is like a game that people just aren't willing to play at this point. And I'm like, hey, if I need to play this for healing and more healing and my personal evolution and growth, then I'll play the game.
Well, I think that's part of the self-awareness journey is falling in love with the journey of who you're becoming so that dating isn't the goal. Who you're becoming, what you're learning about yourself is part of the process of dating and relationships. So therefore, if you find people who are on a growth journey with you, you guys will both be growing and you can keep growing towards each other. Whereas if you're dating people who have zero interest in personal development or understanding their own world and you are, then they're staying the same and you're growing past them and you guys can't connect back with each other. You're going to miss each other. So that's why I think the self-awareness, my little slogan there of it's lonely.
I love that.
I get so many of my members and
Lonely in these self-aware streets.
you're like, you need to create a dating app or something. I'm like, what do you think this program could be? Guys, reach out to each other, have fun, find each other. Uh,
There you go.
yeah. So that coming from a place of self exploration when it comes to dating, I think is an exercise in
Mhm.
practicing detachment.
Mm.
Detachment has been huge for me to almost heal. I won't say I'm 100% healed, but heal my anxious attachment. So I was actually fearful avoidant, so I went between anxious and avoidant. But when you can really challenge the thoughts that you think, because they're all made up anyways, and when you recognize if those thoughts are serving you or not to how you want to feel, you can actually start to look at dating and even a relationship that you're in where you're getting triggered as a self exploration of something that needs to be healed because it may have nothing to do with the other person. They're just a mirror for you. So, have you gone through any? I'm sure you have, as far as looking at your partner as a mirror for the work that you still need to do?
Yeah, for sure. And my top value besides awareness of mind, because I want to practice and make sure that I'm aware of my thoughts. And I use this example a lot of when I would get in like ice baths. my mind would sit there and be like, "Oh, it's too cold. This is getting dangerous. People said it was dangerous. I don't have enough time. Oh, I need to get my coffee ready first." Like my mind is spinning out, and I'm able to just watch the shit show of my mind. So the awareness of mind is my very top value. My second top value is growth. And there became a point in time in my marriage, actually for a very long time, where I had to slow my growth, which was fine. But it got to a point where it was like I was had an emphasis on growth and my partner didn't. And it became this kind of contention point because she wanted to just kind of do the same thing over and over and over again and just kind of write it out and be okay being okay. And for me, I'm like, let's explore, let's see how we can understand ourselves better. And it really kind of started driving a little bit of wedge. And in relationships now, yeah, it's huge component if I'm going to be with somebody is like they're growth oriented, and I got a chance, just like you said, Tara, I got a chance to see so much of myself in that first relationship outside of my marriage that I talked about. And I would see myself getting anxious at
Yeah.
times. And then I would see myself, and I forget the term you used, Tara, but in one of your videos, it was like a rebellious, like they did something, so I like kind of rebelled and like did something too or whatnot.
Protest.
And so I like protest behaviors. I was doing protest behaviors and she didn't text me for 6 hours, so I'm not going to text her for 6 hours. And I'm like seeing myself in this behavior and getting triggered and such. So it was like such a great opportunity to be able to see myself in that light. And I love that people say it's like you can only do so much healing by yourself, but there's going to be aspects of you that will heal or that you get to process or see for yourself inside the container of a relationship. And it was a beautiful experience. I mean, it didn't end the way that off the start things were going, but it was a great opportunity to see myself better, and I learned and I improved, and I will continue to take my lessons into the next relationship and the next.
Yeah, so it makes me sad, especially what I get a lot from men, is that they get so hurt and heartbroken from even one bad relationship that they just give up on love altogether, even though that's what they desire. And to me, that's the self-abandonment piece. If you take
Mm,
one experience, one heartbreaking experience, and you don't learn from it to become better and evolve so you don't keep recreating it, you just resolve yourself of that's how love is, or that's how relationships, all women, all men, whatever. You start playing the victim, or you start labeling people as everybody's a narcissist or ADHD or
yeah,
trauma, whatever. It blocks you from the thing that you actually want, which is connection. But that connection with somebody else only comes after you understand the connection with yourself. You cannot have
yes,
a deep, loving, connected relationship with somebody else for long periods of time if you don't love yourself. You will only accept the love that you think you're deserving of. And one thing that I think is unbelievably true is you can look at how much somebody has self-worth and self-love by who they've chosen as a partner.
true, very true. And what they tolerate, quote unquote, tolerate in the relationship. And I have different friends of mine who are females that go back in the same relationship and it's the same thing, and then they break up again, and it's like this vicious cycle. And what happens a lot of times is, and Tara, and I love that you speak to this as well. It's like we get this dopamine hit, like, oh, they want me back. It's literally like a chemical attachment. It's like they made me feel good, but then they put me down and I feel bad, but then they made me feel good again. And so we're constantly seeking that next feel good. And when you're in this relationship that's highs and lows, and that's how my marriage was, it was like we would, be have these contention points, a blow up fight. I got myself to where it's like I was no longer getting in anger. I did years and years and years ago. And I won't get into the side notes of how that was kind of triggering to her to not see me get into anger. But it would, and then we would make up and have this passionate makeup session. And then for me, it takes me a while after a huge, like people yelling at me and stuff. It takes me a while to integrate back in my body.
Yeah.
And so she would see that time as me disconnecting. And I'm like, I'm regulating. I would try to talk her through it. And it would be this thing to where she would get upset at me because I'm not doing certain things and I'm not treating her the certain ways. And I'm like, give me a couple days. We just had a huge fight. And then we have this like huge, makeup, and then it was this constant cycle, and I was constantly being pulled into it and being pulled into it. And I know a lot of people get on that hamster wheel as well. We want to feel good. We want to get out of this pain that we're in. So anybody that's dangling a carrot that we think that's going to help us feel good, or dopamine, or the new dating, or the new person, or the new this, or the new that, it's like we're constantly chasing that dopamine, and it keeps us in this hamster
Yeah,
wheel.
and then they justify it. Well, I love him, and I'm like, is it love? Is this how you would define love? A lot of the work that I do with clients is write me out your definition of healthy love. Okay, is that your current partner? And they're like, not even close. I'm like, cool. So it's not love; it's attachment.
Yeah. And back to the relationship at the end, and I'm glad you brought this up, and I want to be vulnerable and share. Like I was hurt at the end. Like I was bothered. And what I ultimately saw for myself was I wasn't bothered by the relationship. I wasn't hurt from the relationship. I wasn't hurt from her. She did things in integrity. She did the best she could with what she's got. And I think all of us are doing that. I mean, obviously, if we talk about psychopaths and narcissists, it's like, yeah, even them, they're doing the best we can. I don't want to say that out loud, but ultimately what hurt me the most is I was mad at myself. I was mad at myself for shying away from some tough conversations. I was mad at myself for not setting boundaries. I was mad at myself for not being more clear and in my power.
Yeah,
Off the start of the relationship, I was very secure, very, very secure. And there was times where the gal I was dating, she would kind of get into some stuff, and she would get uncertain, and she would kind of like want to either, flee or whatever, or she was just having some things that she was processing. And I was very good at holding space. But it got to a point where I felt like I was being pushed off and kind of like this, in and out a little bit again. And when she would distance, I would get a little anxious. And then it was just like, so I'm like seeing myself now getting anxious, and then I'm getting triggered. So I'm like, forget this. And then I get distant and avoidant. And so I got caught in the mix. And so in looking back, I was like, I wasn't mad at the relationship. I wasn't mad at her. I wasn't hurt by that, but I was hurt, and I was judging myself
yeah.
for how I showed up. And for me, it was a quick moment, because I'm like, okay, I learned a tremendous amount. Tara and I have a mentor that likes to say you either get the result you want or the lessons you need. And I got the lessons I needed. And so in looking back now, I can have forgiveness in how I showed up. But a lot of times we get hurt, but I was mad at myself because I wasn't showing up fully authentic. And it's like, what would that relationship have looked like if I really
Yeah.
was? But now I get to take my knowing and my lessons into a new relationship and try it
Well,
again.
that's what healing is taking the time to reflect on what would I have done differently and not shaming yourself for doing the best you could with the tools and skills that you have. I don't know if it's just men, but my male clients tend to lean towards shame more than anything of, I wish I would
Mm.
have done this, or I regret doing that, or, and I'm like, but you weren't this version of you now. The version of you now probably wouldn't have been in that situation or wouldn't have made those choices. And so I always have this phrase of pain has purpose. And if you don't actually go seek why pain happened, why pain occurred, then you can't actually come from a place of gratitude for the experience, even though it was hurtful and painful, because of who you've become from that pain, right? So pain has purpose. And on the other side of pain is peace. So when you can go back into the pain or go through the healing journey and not just avoid it and find the next shiny new object that's going to give you that dopamine hit, when you actually heal the parts of you that were the parts that created that relationship or created the divorce or the breakup or whatever, and you can heal those parts of you that created that, then you can make different intentional choices moving forward and have different outcomes, hopefully.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yep. And I love what you said too. It's like, and I could have easily seen myself doing this. It's like coming out of that relationship. I'm like, ugh, that was painful. Here I am again in this pain, and I got to deal with what I'm dealing with, and I got to process what I'm processing. I just got out of a marriage that I had to process a whole bunch of stuff, and now I got to process this stuff from this relationship. And I could have easily turned my nose up on it and been like, okay, whatever. And I had, Tara and I were rapping a little bit before the call, and we started, sharing this concept that us men, and the men listening might be, kicking me under the table, like, shut up,
Don't
man,
tell the ladies this.
don't tell this stuff, man. But there's this conversation of like, how do you show up in a relationship? And they refer to it as red pill, blue pill. The blue pill is like the nice guy, the servant, the caring guy, the big teddy bear. And then the red pill is like the leader, the take charge, the I don't really give a F mentality. And there's an extreme to two.
Yeah.
And so it's like, us guys are getting this, information out here in the dating world of how to show up and do this. And the women out there are having these experience with all these different types of guys and, they're doing certain things that are like, oh, just act like you don't care about them and have options. And, if it, and just like go a few days without texting her and like all this advice. We're just like, yeah, but if that's not what she's about and what she needs, and if I'm going to go through texting her and I'm just trying to get all these options and stuff, it's like, what's the end game here? Am I just going to be a player for life? Like I had my fun trying to play the game in high school and such, and I know how much value a partner, a true partner, can bring to my life, and I can bring to that person's life as well, so we can continue to grow together. But and also the ladies too. It's like sometimes they get so jaded that they're rallying together, and I told Tara, I saw a video just earlier today that lady was like on TikTok. She said, in the comments, we all decided as the girls, we're just gonna stay home. We're just gonna be done with the dating, stay home. And so there's so many people that are walking out there jaded that when they do go into a date, they have all these filters. Is this person like this person? Is this person going to do this? Is this person anxious? Is this person avoidant? Is this person got this characteristics? So all we have is this blindness, this overwhelm of information and perspectives, that we have a tough time being present with somebody. And that's big time the work that I do in my programs and my teaching is all that is I want people to master the art of being present. And even if literally like unless there was some huge red flag, I'm still going to be very present with that person on a date. If I see right away, it's like, oh, this isn't the person, I'm still going to be very respectful, still going to open doors. I'm still going to be present with that person, hey, have great conversation, because you just never know where the world will lead from there. But people are so quick to chalk it up as a loss. Oh, like they're like this person, they've got this, they're that. And we just are walking blind out there,
Yeah.
and it's tough, and it makes a lot of people, and I say jokingly in some of the comments with these videos on TikTok, because I'm in the relationship algorithm. I got myself out of there for a little bit, but I'm back in
You'll
there.
go start screaming huskies. You'll get right out of it. It'll just be nothing but
Oh,
huskies.
okay, I'll do that. And so I commented on a couple posts that I'm just like, man, these guys are they're fumbling the bag out there. They're making it harder for the rest of us, and it really is. It's like I could go into a date with somebody that's been on 15 dates and just is kind of over it. I'm like, man, she just kind of checked out, and
Yeah.
it might have been a great fit, but she's bringing her baggage to that conversation, and so that's why the work that Tara does, and just understanding relationships and understanding yourself and having self awareness is absolutely huge. Because if you're bringing your baggage to the conversation or the date, then the person's going to see that and feel like there's some disconnect that you don't like about them or whatever the case may
Even
be.
the dating apps, like I admittedly just got back on the dating apps because I'm running a little bit of an experiment on how I shift being high value. I hate the word high value, but that's the word I'm going to use.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with it.
So
Yeah.
high value, like how do I approach dating apps differently to weed out the noise? And I hear a lot from like self-aware men and men who are, would be an ideal partner. They're not on the apps. I'm like, well, okay, I'm on there. So there is an exception to that. And how many men will like comment on if you're just going to swipe right and not talk and like, then why even match? And like just starting to bitch and complain in their profile. You have like 5 prompts for me to get to know you. You're holding a fish, you have a picture of a waterfall, like, this is my chance to get to know you, and you're gonna spend that opportunity to complain? And so part of that is, yeah, like you said, not bringing that energy into dating. If you are gonna bitch and
Yeah.
complain about dating apps or dating, then don't be on them. Like, go work on yourself that is not coming in with hope, with a good energy of getting to know people, that you're so attached and have so much of your worth tied to people matching or connecting with you. I think, and you might relate to this. I look back at when I was back on the market back in 2007, um, when we didn't have online dating. I think we had eHarmony, maybe Match.com. Like it was old school, and that was like for old people, and I was 23. So when you'd go into a bar, there'd be 200 people in a bar. I mean, I was in San Diego, they're big bars. And half of them would be men, half of them would be women. 99% of the men you wouldn't match with, quote unquote. You wouldn't be attracted to them. Maybe, I mean, I'm 5'11, so I'm tall, like most of them would be shorter than me. You wouldn't be drawn to that many people. So dating apps are very similar, except you are facing rejection, yes or no, more consistently. And they're also addictive in nature. I can go get a validation dopamine hit any moment, right? It's just like social media. So now we've got this experience. If you were in a bar scenario and one guy was making eyes at you that you weren't interested, you just move to a different part of the bar or just ignore him. Whereas here you have to like face that person's picture and go, nope, yep. And then you get the connection where maybe that guy's bought you a drink, aka you both have matched. Now, can you have a conversation? Most people suck, and I'm just gonna throw men in there. Y'all suck at typing, right? Like texting. It's just not your gift. It's not your strength. But cool, get off the dating apps. But I think to your point with that blue pill or red pill, the nice guy thing is that part of my sadness for men, and I do have a men's group where I've really started to explore this with them as we get into relational leadership, is that they're so afraid to lead in a masculine way. They don't have a blueprint for what that looks like in modern day dating and modern day relationships. We've girl bossed a little too close to the sun, in my opinion, where
Ah, good for you.
any man who has an opinion is now a toxic man. He's a narcissist. He's all these labels that are very damaging. I have dated men who their past partners called them a narcissist and they've gone into therapy being like, okay, apparently I'm a narcissist now. What is this? How do we fix it? And they're like, the therapist is like, you narcissists don't come into therapy asking that question. You're not a narcissist. So anybody who has a difference of opinion is now labeled. And there's these fucking Facebook groups where like, are we dating the same man?
Oh, I know. Somebody had actually put my picture in there and asked, and we literally had 2 text messages back and forth, or 2
Yes.
messages on the app back and forth. And a friend of mine said, she didn't put my picture actually, but she put my name, and somebody was like, a friend of mine was like, "Are you on some dating apps?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Somebody's asking about you."
It is
I'm like, "What?"
you are looking for the evidence to match your belief that everybody's
Mhm.
out to get you. You are blocking
Mhm.
connection before it even starts. If
Mhm.
you don't have enough of a filter to know if somebody's bullshitting you and cheating on you, that's your work to do. And maybe integrity needs to be your top value because I promise you, as somebody who studies behaviors and patterns in people, they are showing you whether they're operating integrity or not. So if they're dating multiple people and you think that you're exclusive, A, you're probably not. And B, they are probably showing you those patterns that they don't value their word well before they've been posted on a group. So part of that to me is
Absolutely.
just that it's women I think are just becoming just as toxic as men. Now, the difference is that men are physically stronger and men have a higher percentage of sexual assault and all that kind of stuff. So there is some statistical evidence of that. But for the most part, it makes it to me, it makes it harder for everyone who has good, pure intentions to find connection. That we want men to lead. We want them to be that strong masculine, but oh, don't go too far. Otherwise, you're toxic. It's like
Mhm.
if we can for the men listening, come up with what your definition is of a healthy man, of what healthy masculinity is to you, based on what you've learned, what you've experienced in life, where you maybe went more in your feminine or went more passive in a past relationship. How do you define it? Then go find a partner that values that same thing in a masculine rather than finding somebody you're attracted to and you have to either bend and cater and form to their view, therefore being emasculated, or that you then are in conflict with and it becomes abusive and controlling. There are
Yeah.
people out there who will value your version of masculinity, but most of us don't we don't have an intentional practice of understanding what that is about us. Same thing with the feminine. I've had many times had to reevaluate what is my identity as a feminine because I lead so much of my masculine that it's hard to find a masculine man who could take me on because I have a lot of masculine energy because it's been my protection as I've been a single mom in this dating world.
Absolutely. You gotta make it happen and, make an income for yourself and, go help people. And so it's like there's a lot of women that are doing that too. And, it's a tough road. And there's this whole conversation or this quote, I guess, that's like soft times make soft men.
Mhm.
Hard times make hard men or whatever. So it's like the hard men make soft times, and then the soft times make soft men make hard times. So then we've got to, as men, get stronger in these hard times to make it easier for the next generation. And so there's this cycle constantly happening. And I see this cycle that the men are going through and also the women are going through. And, there has been this huge women empowerment movement, which is good. It's much needed. And then it kind of tips the scale of like this jadedness and the guys are trying to rule us and, control us and all this. And I was in a relationship as well where I got to a point where I was absolutely 100% done trying to lead.
Yeah.
Because even if I made a decision about something in the house, I would get criticized, I would get judged, I would get put down. And so I got to a point where I was just like, I was so fried that I could not get myself to make decisions inside my own house because I was fearful of the criticism that was bound to happen because that was how things were going in my household. So getting out on the dating world, I was like, I knew I have to lead, step up. And I was in a relationship yet again early on that the partner I was with, she was very helpful in that. She was in her masculine too, a single mom that's been, the sole, provider for her daughter for a very long time. She was doing a great job off the start of letting me lead, but there still was these moments where, we would like, go to dinner somewhere and she's like, "Oh, that's like 15 minutes away. We could have went here." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. We're going to go to the place that I chose. It's absolutely fine." And I didn't allow it to bother me, but there was this moment of like, man, I really do need to train myself and to be more self-aware of not defaulting to this pattern that I lived for so long inside my marriage, but also not be so hard charging and I need to leave to where it's just like I'm, just ruling this person that I'm with. So there's this beautiful balance, and we all have that in ourselves. Because sometimes, like you said, Tara, if you are just trying to lead every step of the way, and there's a woman that also likes to lead at times, then there's going to be an imbalance. Or maybe she might be like, okay, yeah, absolutely, take the reins. And so to be able to understand that even that dynamic can be tricky, but it doesn't have to be. It's just reading people and knowing when you're in your element, when you're in your power, knowing, being able to see when other people are wearing masks, which sounds kind of daunting, but it's basic people skills 101. And yet again, the self-aware army is where we need to be.
I love that. I love that. What is your definition of leadership based on your experiences and what you've learned?
So for a long time, I was in this masculine energy, and I was take action, take action, take action, take action. To where one day I was just taking a whole bunch of action, and I'm like way down the road. I'm miserable. I'm like just burnout. I'm like, what am I even doing? So then I decided to take a step back and get into more energy work and manifesting and all this. And I must have taken too many steps back and fell off a cliff, because then it got to a point where I couldn't take action.
Mhm.
And so through my work and through my journey and my experience, I've been able to get to this point where I'm playing from this place of like this heart-centered place. I care deeply about other people, but I walk this line, this razor's edge of not giving a damn at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be so involved in needing to be liked and all this. I do care deeply about people, but I can't take it personal. It's almost like this warrior's mentality. And so the more I can play in this middle area of keeping my heart open and not being jaded and hurt and frustrated and letting the inner child run the show, but instead being present, because I feel like when we are present, when we're not working from our past, when we're not attached to the expectations of what things need to look like in the future, when we're not scared to have growth and break through our glass ceiling of what's normal for us, and we're not afraid at the bottom of the bottom of being alone and being judged, or having people that maybe they don't agree with us, maybe they don't like us. When we can be present and allow this box that we're living in to dissolve, I really feel like you start to find yourself and you start to find your groove, you find your authenticity, and that's what everybody is searching for out there. And if you want to stand out in the crowd in the dating world, it's just be you. And I'm to this point now. Man, yet again, just the self-awareness, the hindsight 2020. When I got on the dating apps, at first it was like, oh, this is kind of fun, kind of fun. But I got to this place where I was checking it way too often, and I was like, okay, no new messages. And like I said, I'm in a smaller community, so there's not a lot of connections just real close by. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, I was getting frustrated with it. I was getting jaded with it. I was letting it mean something about me. And I got to a point where just like, look, all I need to do at this point is to do what I've always done, and that's improve myself. And if I continue to improve myself, and I love you have this same mentality, Tara, is like when you continue to prove yourself and to show up and share your heart, you will be
Yep.
seen. But if you have this mask on, even if somebody sees you and wearing your mask, that's not you. So the relationship, when you do show who you are, it's going to have some problems. So if you can be authentic and just share your quirks and your weirdness and your funniness and your particulars from where you are today, then somebody will see that and somebody will be attracted to that. And I'm a firm believer at that. So I'm just back in this place of caring about everybody, but at the same time, not giving a damn what other people think. And I'm just living life. And I have gotten myself back to this point too, where there's so many faces that I've seen on these apps. It's just wild. And I've only been on there like three.
Wait till you've been on it years. You're like, you're still here too.
Oh, yeah. And I had somebody say, I just see the same people on there. Like she said, I got in there 2 years after I'd been on there, and the same people on there. But you see so many faces that I start to like get confused of what I am looking
Yeah.
for. And at the end of the day, I'm a big proponent of synchronicities.
Mm.
I feel like the relationship that I had after my marriage, that's the relationship that I needed for growth at that point, and it had to work out the way that it did. I'm a huge, huge, huge proponent of synchronicity. So if I'm not trusting that when I'm showing up authentic in my power, working myself, if I'm not trusting that I will know that right person at that right time, there will be this different connection because there's a lot of pretty faces on these apps, a lot of attractive faces, but I feel that I will know when this person is somebody that I deeply want to pursue and I can see myself going to the next level with. And sometimes you do, you have to, turn over some stones and go on some dates and, skin your knees and bump your elbows. And I had been ghosted, I've got some stories too. Like I drove 2 hours to this town and this gal just did not show up. So I've got some fun stories too, but it's all part of it. And if we get so hurt by it and frustrated and we're checking out, we're missing the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
We're missing it.
I agree. And I think to a lot of what you spoke about, what came up for me is, people claim I want you to get to know the real me. Like they want this deep, authentic connection, yet they use AI photos. Like, what?
I know the
Filters
filters are
on
crazy
men,
out
no
there.
less. I'm seeing filters on men. I'm like, I don't know. Did women not think that those are filters? Yeah. So,
Like,
yeah, what is it? The goal for me, this was a big shift I had almost right off the dating apps, is to not be the most easily palatable person on dating apps. For the women's side,
yeah.
especially on places like Bumble, I've never been on Tinder, but it gets overwhelming. Like I'll get 1,000 likes in a day. There's just no, it becomes a full-time job of just clearing that out. Um,
Mhm.
so to be more selective means I've got to put the parts of me out there that
Yeah.
do make me stand out, that make me unique, that most people would probably think is annoying. Like I put self-awareness and that I love to have deep talks on my profile because the average guy is probably gonna be like, boring, next, like definitely not doing that. Cool. Like it's doing its job and dating is a process of elimination. And so yeah, you do need to put yourself out there and go on dates. I had the worst date of my life about 2 years ago where I mean, I'll just give you a little synopsis. At one point,
Yes, please
put
do.
on a skirt and come back and sit on his lap. Like that was yeah. Didn't remember
I like literally some of these stories, I'm like, this has to be made up.
women
And
lie about
clearly,
abuse. He's never seen a woman walk around with a black eye before, so he thinks they're all lying. It was just, yeah, yeah, it was special. It was special.
oh,
So at that point,
gotcha.
like, and I had a gut feeling I shouldn't go on the date before that. I
Mm.
ignored it, and that was my lesson. Like, I had to learn. This was the only date I got in the car and like cried and was afraid he was following me. Like, it was bad. Um,
Good for you. I had the same when I was ghosted. I just literally the whole way there, I'm like, she's not gonna show up. The night before, I just knew. I was like, she's not gonna show up. And then I talked to her just a little bit that morning, it was a moment of like, okay, trust yourself. Yeah, I see the silver lining. I got the message. Another lesson. Thank you.
and don't go.
I mean,
Use ChatGPT to come up with whatever BS statement. Send him a thanks, but no thanks. Block him, but just don't ghost. Like, ugh. Anyway,
yeah, yeah, that's a whole nother thing too. Yep, for sure.
that'll be next
Yeah,
episode. All right.
I tell you what though, and I love your angle too of, you know, because it's like we want people to accept us. So then sometimes we present ourselves as somebody that's easy and accepting and all that. So then we get people that are like, oh, we see them as a certain way. And it's like, but that's not me. And so when you can be more upfront and clear of what your non-negotiables are and not in a way, because it's like, I think it's funny. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm like looking at a profile and I'm like, this is checking out pretty good. And they're like, if you, are a MAGA supporter and like all this stuff, I'm like, oh, okay. Even, and I don't get into politics, and that's not where I'm going with this conversation. But even that, I'm just like, okay,
Everybody's super political. Not
I,
like you're gonna we're gonna clash.
if yeah, if that's very important to you to that point, then 100%. But for me, it's like there could have potentially been potential there, but it's like the energy that you're putting like that shows me a side of you. But it is, I mean, yeah, it's the same concept too. It's just like if that's you and that's your non-negotiable, then more power to you. But sometimes we get a little forceful of like this checklist of, if you're doing this and this and this and this and this, and it's like, okay, well, you just X'd out 99.999% of the people on these apps, and maybe that one person will float across. But I do agree. I agree of just like being a little bit more real and even kind of like establish values up front and all that. That's huge. And I actually started part of the filters was like, I think I would appreciate a more spiritualesque
Mhm.
person. And so I started doing that filter, and it seems like it's like, okay, yeah, maybe so. So just it's all trial and error.
Have you ever
It's
looked
all trial
at
and
other site?
error.
Like, have you ever seen a girl's app on what she's seeing from men's profiles?
No, I
Hey, hire me.
haven't.
You should do that. I'll
Oh,
send you a screenshot of the dating profiles I see.
that's actually a really good idea because I have no idea how I stand out among, it's like in marketing and things of that nature. It's like I can see people's different landing pages and their messages and, their messaging and all that. But it's like I have no
If you
idea how
approach dating apps like a marketer, it's fascinating. Yeah. Do your target.
I kind of do, but I also like because I've updated some pictures and things, and I'm just like, I don't want to get too wild on this, but yeah, I kind of do. And I test and
Who
yeah.
does your ideal partner want to see? What is she looking for? Doing that whole thing. Awesome. Well, let's do this. What advice would you give Adam from a year ago who was just stepping into the dating world after a divorce to get him to come from an energy of exploration, adventure when it comes to dating, and detachment so that no matter what happens on dating apps and relationships, he's finding more of himself through that process?
Yeah, it's so good. It does. It all comes down to this being okay being alone.
Mhm.
And if you wanna go on dates and meet people and explore, that's fine, but and I mean, I get it, like, you can be frustrated if you want, but let's not just be so jaded if it's not the right person and you wasted time or whatever the case may be, but for me to be able to and I think about this too, and I love to, like, don't shy away from this, like, you are a high value woman, and I want others to see and to hold themselves to that standard. I see myself as a high value man.
Mhm.
And so it's like, I wanna make sure that I'm playing this game as a high value man in my life and business and the relationships I have with my friends and my family and all that. And that way I know when that right person walks in my life, I'm playing the game that they're ready for me and I'm ready for
Yeah,
them.
I love
Because if I am just kind of like dating a whole bunch and if I'm needing to fill a void and I'm needing the dopamine hits and I'm so consumed with that world and I'm neglecting my business and I'm not really connecting deep with my kids, that person floats across my plate, I am not gonna see them and they're not gonna see me. Not to the level that we could if it comes to being fully in my power and in my presence and all that. So, and it comes down to this disattachment, like you said, non-attachment, and just being okay being alone and not being in a hurry. There's this beautiful concept of divine timing,
you.
and people just don't want to be alone, it seems like. And it breaks my heart, and I get it, because when you're alone, you're forced to face the things that are going on inside you. You're forced to face your past. You're forced to face the decisions that you're making day in and day out. So we try to keep ourselves busy and distracted and safe and stuck. But when you can create more room in your life, like a vacuum, the universe, God,
Thor.
whatever you want to call it, source, will fill that vacuum. But if you have no space in your life because you're so busy on so many dates and so many swipes and so many distractions on social media and so many hours in there and so many problems in the world and all this, you're just so inundated with the problems of the world. If you don't have the space in your life, how are you supposed to welcome somebody in that's fully meant to step in and be in your life?
100%, especially if you spend time, energy, and emotion on somebody who isn't treating you well and isn't that ideal partner. Your ideal partner can't come in while you're stuck on some situationship who won't give you what you want.
1000%.
Well, thanks so much, Adam. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I love the work you're doing. I think it's such a huge need because, like I said, there's a huge amount of labels and confusion and just overwhelm when it comes to how we show up and what do we do and what's the new dating app and how do we do this, that, the other thing. And it's just a mess for a lot of people and it's a unsettling territory. And for you to be able to hold space for others and answer questions and give guidance and even yet again the framework that you were talking about earlier, allow people to really understand what it is they're looking for, what that feels like, what that looks like, what the experience will be like when they're there, and that gets them one major step closer to that end result of being connected and in love and doing the life thing with somebody. So
Thanks.
let's all stay in the game. Don't take everything so personal, and let's just have a little bit of fun and enjoy ourselves while we're here. And Let's see what happens.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
I'm talking to myself. I'm giving myself that advice. If nobody else takes that advice, that's fine, but I'm talking to myself
All
here.
right. Well, thanks, Adam. I appreciate it so much. That was a great way to wrap up the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Unblock Your BS podcast. I hope you found this conversation as powerful and inspiring as I did. Before we wrap up, I want to extend an invitation to you. Yes, you. If you have a story to share about your own healing journey, insights on self-awareness or healing, or if you're navigating the path of personal growth and would love to explore it further, I'd love to have you as a guest on one of the future episodes. This space is all about having real, meaningful, and honest conversations, whether it's diving into a breakthrough you've had, exploring a topic that's close to your heart, or even joining me for live coaching. It's all about unblocking the belief systems and stories that might be holding you back and finding ways to fully step into your most authentic self. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, reach out to me. You can head on over to unblockyourbs.com/podcast. I'll link that up in the show notes if you want to apply to be on the show, if you want to join me for some live coaching because you really need the support and the insight. And then, hey, don't forget to share this episode with someone who might need it. Leave a review if you're loving the podcast. Tell me your favorite parts. Tell me what you want to hear. And until next time, keep unblocking your BS and creating the life you deserve. Have a good one.